Welcome. This is the December 12th vm-bhyve production user call. We have Andrew, Hans, Jan, Mark, and myself, Michael, and I have a bunch of news to share. So Hans has looked at libvdsk. That is a piece of software that intends to support unmodified QCAT2 and vm-bhyve images in bhyve. We together have reached out to the original developer and note that OpenBSD has its own implementation built into their base system. dtrace.conf took place yesterday. Jan, how much of that did you catch, and what were your takeaways?
Not that much because I later joined the OpenZFS call.
I'm glad your priorities are straight. The recording should be up. It was a neat event, a one-day event that takes place like every 4 years. And it was mostly online unless you're in the Bay Area and went for like the social hour. Very cool. So there was a very interesting post, and someone kindly wrote up a blog post that might be fresh in response to people asking. December 8th, 2024. So this person wanted USB pass-through for a software-defined radio device. It's like, okay, that's a reasonable request, but so often with small form factor devices, if you pass through your USB interface, you pass through your keyboard and other important stuff now that everything is pretty unified there. With a PCI slot, you can have a dedicated USB device. So they did some acrobatics. They found that there is the USB IP project, and if I'm not mistaken, they spun up one QEMU image that grabbed hold of the specific device because QEMU supports that a la carte USB pass-through. They then spun up a VM under bhyve that would receive that device. Welcome, Rupesh. And then they handed the device between the QCOW2, I'll say virtual machine, even though you can split hairs on if it's emulator or otherwise, and then received it over in the bhyve VM. Now, looking at the code, it looks like that USB IP hasn't been touched in like 12 years, yet it's working. So I will drop this link in chat. Several people commented in social media that that's kind of cool. Is that a plausible longer-term strategy to get a la carte USB pass-through, or should we completely rework the USB stack and handling in bhyve, which could take a very long time? I will let you all investigate that one. Let's take a quick look at USB IP. And while we do that, Rupesh, do you have any topics for the call today, or are you just listening in? So here goes. Updates from 2011 on React OS. Wow. Okay. Here is the USB IP project. Talk about two things that were probably never intended to speak to one another, but here we are.
In a way, it's a neat hack, but on the other side, it's a horrifying concept to expose USB drivers to the internet at
One of
large
them,
by
yes,
accident. Like, oh
exactly.
yeah, sure, I have this UDP or TCP port open by accident, and now you get to plug in a keyboard, a mouse, USB video output,
Yeah.
and now you have KVM access.
Ah, go figure. And there might be KVM implications that could be, I don't know, useful in safe environments, but
KVM as in keyboard video mouse, not
yes, exactly.
clone
No, that's
virtual
what I mean.
machine.
Correct. Yes, like we're all, now that so few machines have actual out-of-band management, well, maybe this has some nifty way. Anyway, enjoy. There are the links, and it's a lovely SourceForge project. Your mileage may vary. There is a new CloneOS release or pre-release. They have updated with FreeBSD 14.2. I believe they fixed the download links. I reached out to Oyeg, and one thing that was of key interest to me is, are they using any form of live migration. And his comment was, no, it's still a bit unpredictable. So within that is not CloneOS, but many people feel these projects have that, but no, it is not part of it. So this is interesting. I've got it downloaded, but didn't have a moment to install it. It is a web interface for CBSD, as I understand. It's a full, here we go, download. Let's see if he fixed the ISO. Yes, fixed. Okay, this had said image and image, so that's corrected. Uh, there you have it. Enjoy. And in reaching out about a problem report in FreeBSD land, I reached out to Domagoj, who had a FreeBSD bhyve hypercall project some time ago, and he's provided a lengthy update here. I've sanitized it gently, and his repo for all things hypercall related is here. Let's take a look. Cadets. 4 months ago. Okay, so that is active. That has a bunch of people interested. I know he's busy with things like Cherry BSD and friends. Cadets HyperTrace. Is anyone familiar with Cadets? An implementation of dtrace that supports tracing of virtual machines in real time. Ooh, okay. Currently, HyperTrace only supports one mode of operation where the guest is. I will drop this in chat. I am all for anything that approaches X-ray vision into a virtual machine. Dtrace options, resolvers. Has anyone bumped into this in their past? And gee, are there any OS users with dtrace here? I believe there are at least 2 or 3 in the Lumos land. So there you have it. So he is working on that, and he's given me a written update that you are welcome to read. Gotchas. Okay. So yesterday on the theme of the week has been bug reporting and triage. And yesterday on the OpenZFS call, I believe, Jan, you get credit for looking up Phabricator forks, and Phorge came up. Well, I reached out to a package maintainer who perhaps should remain anonymous because this topic gets very, very emotional very quickly, as Mark L pointed out. But his key takeaways are that it appears that FreeBSD is only scratching the surface of what Phabricator can do, such that if they do maintain their own port, it shouldn't be that complex. It shouldn't be too difficult to migrate to it. But as many have emphasized, there is great hostility to Phabricator because it's PHP based, and because, well, we're in an era where people are familiar with GitHub pull requests, yet the FreeBSD project is not on GitHub. So he gave a great update here, mentioned experiences like Gitia and Forgio, which came up on the call yesterday. So do check that out in the call link posted. This is on the standard agenda for the calls that are completely wide open. You're welcome to take a look. Jan, any observations, thoughts, questions based on yesterday's conversation on that?
No.
Okay. So here we are.
So,
Go ahead.
since I wasn't on that conversation,
Sure.
what was the end goal for wanting a Phabricator replacement?
Phabricator is no longer maintained. They are upfront about that. So you kind of break it, you bought it, and FreeBSD, I guess, technically maintains its own fork just to keep things going. In theory, it might not be difficult to migrate to Phorge to leverage everything that's up and running, and has been up and running apparently for 15 years. They went from Gnats, Silent G, to Bugzilla to Phabricator, and what's next is not clear. So it's maybe not a pressing issue unless they find some massive vulnerability in in the PHP used by Phabricator or otherwise. So
But at that point, would we not look more for a Git workflow?
that is certainly
Yeah,
attractive.
GitHub.
Yes, that is super attractive, but no one has identified the tool that will effortlessly let us bring in the tens of thousands of PRs and bring us into the modern, somewhat moving target era.
Yeah,
To be
that's the
fair,
problem.
I mean, our current Phabricator setup does work
Welcome.
perfectly fine. Hello.
So,
Hello.
Mark, what is a Git workflow to you? There are lots of things people think of when they use similar expressions. Do you mean put it all on GitHub and just be a guest on someone else's hosted platform and hope for the best, or something different?
Well, I'd say something different.
Okay.
So the reality is that we will likely never move our code bases directly onto GitHub. So being able to do a pull request and merge directly is likely never going to happen. I mean,
Well,
it could, but we'd have to have the source of truth for our Git repos to be on GitHub. However,
no.
if you look at
Let
the
him finish.
current workflow that we have with Phabricator, it's up to the developer to push a diff out to Phabricator, get people to look at it, approve it, go through that process, and then they still need to push it directly to the FreeBSD Git anyway. So you could still use GitHub for some of those reviews and that kind of workflow, and then it's up to the developer to then push that change to a different remote. So that's what I would be thinking.
There's other alternatives to GitHub which allow a pull request based workflow. It doesn't even have to be something as bloated as GitLab. Even Gitty and similar things support this workflow.
Right, but that workflow only works if the source of truth of the repo is on that system. If it's on GitLab, if it's on GitHub.
Can't they be self-hosted and the project could theoretically wrap its own Git repo with Git?
Well, I just wanted to point out that we do have a lot of contributors who are from what you would say countries that have sanctions, and they have serious issues working with GitHub. We have contributors from Iran, Russia, way too many other countries as well. So the project's policy is that we're okay with it because the project is a project. It's not an organization in the US. That's why we have a separation of church and state. That's why we have a separation of the project and the foundation.
Yep.
So, but moving it to GitHub is going to bring US political issues to the project. So I think I love the idea of a Git flow, but I would love it if it still would be hosted by the project.
Right. Well, Git is not GitHub, and
Phabricator.
as
Yes.
I believe
As
Mark
in
just said,
porn
we're
is
not
not Pornhub, yeah.
likely moving to it. That's been long ago, and I think Alfred was shouted out of the project for suggesting moving to GitHub. So we're not moving to GitHub, but people seem to love Git. So what middle ground is there, and is there a Phabricator extension for Git pushes and you name it?
If I may make a suggestion.
Yes, Hans.
Illumis is using Gerrit, and I think it's great.
I was just going to say that.
Please check my spelling on that and link if you have it.
That's very accurate, yes.
It's great. That is good to hear because people generally have only negative comments in these circumstances. So how is that with Git pushing to wherever you happen to be?
I may say, Michael, that because I try to contribute to FreeBSD, I try to contribute to Illumos. For FreeBSD, I actually needed to read a wiki article about Phabricator to understand what I'm doing.
That is without
On
question.
Gerrit,
Yes.
I'm like 10 minutes and I'm done. You know, I'm not saying that Phabricator is like terrible, but like there was an actual learning curve. And if we're doing this whole Git flow to bring in more users, the more, you know, newcomers, etc., Gerrit was way more user friendly for me. I mean, the design is awful. It's basically 2005, but the usage of it and everything else was very much nicely done. Although Illumos is a very unique case, right, Hans? Because it is on Gerrit, but the code is also on GitHub. Like it's
Well,
that was also.
So Gerrit actually maintains the central repository that everybody's using. Everybody's pushing directly to that repository, which is part of how Gerrit works. And so the GitHub repository is really just a mirror of that, which is in the Gerrit Git master branch.
But I do think that some of these things are what Source Manager is going to be looking at, and you know, I know that Warner has been thinking about what the workflow should be as well.
There's no question about that. Could you drop in a link to the Illumos Gerrit experience so we can just feel that? Capital F. Okay.
I think it's just code Illumos.
Okay.
I think it's just illumos.org.
Let's take a look.
Could be that it's not.
Gerrit, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
And oh, Thomas, yay, he certainly crosses the aisle. Okay, Hans, Thomas, and this rich person. Cool. Rich Low. That said, when you say, oh no, 1995 look, do you mean this CSS, which is not entirely terrible? Come on, let me bump that a little larger. That seems right to, oh, and Andy, this is great. That's some wonderful contributors there. Put a link there. Well, I'll actually like that one. Perfect. Okay. Rupesh, welcome. You have a question in chat. I'm new to this. Want to start contributing to FreeBSD. Can we start with minor bugs? Yes. So, drop in chat your area of expertise, and it's okay to say you don't have one yet. And that will segue nicely into some other topics I have real soon. That said, Jan, super quick question. For PkgBase on FreeBSD, is the user entirely left to setting up their own boot blocks and such? So you pull the payload from the kernel package and drop them in either a UEFI directory or DD them to a master boot record,
No.
etc. No, what do we have?
You can just install without PkgBase once on a physical box and then convert.
Yeah, what about pure PkgBase if we were to have, say, PkgBase VM images after a few hours of work?
Yeah, someone has to write the code for BSD install to, instead of untarring the tarballs, install the packages. Basically, find the stage where PkgBase does the fetch tarballs and replaces it with fetch packages. Find the stage where it does untar the tarballs.
Yeah, that's without question. What about the boot blocks? The boot blocks, the handling of just setting up UEFI partition of
that is not
DDing.
changed by the way you get the content into the file system.
Okay, so then you're seemingly affirming my point. You're left to the user to take those components, drop them in the file system, and push them out to the master boot record as necessary. There's no magic there.
It's about as the same as if you say, so what you could do is you could do a custom installation option in BSD install, and when it's populate /mmt with PkgBase manually.
Okay, thank
you. That you can already do. But it's a lot harder for a user to do than install a system And
Yes,
before you
that is
change
without
anything, just do
question.
the
That is
conversion.
without question. Okay, thank you. And I notice they have a bunch of different kernels when you do a
What
package
you're
base install. How do you select them?
So what you're asking implies almost as if is that because FreeBSD release artifacts are tarballs, users have to do everything themselves with just the tarballs. No, they don't.
Jan, I'm using the release tools. So no, I'm using the release infrastructure. So apparently
Mhm.
Colin's rewriting all of the release stuff. So we're kind of in this weird limbo between
Yes,
updating that for package base or waiting for the new thing. Anyway,
Colin and at least Colin is working on that, but he's not done yet.
correct.
So realistically speaking, if you're not asking for perfection before you're going to accept anything as
Right.
supporting package base,
Yes.
you're left right now with do a normal installation. And
Yeah,
before you
yes,
have
that
any
is without question.
customizations, uh, follow it up after the installation by doing the steps as documented in the wiki page for package base. Do the conversion as documented
Yes.
on that page. And then because you don't have anything added to slash etc, the losing of local modifications is not a big problem because there are not supposed to be any local modifications at that point in the file system. So
I'm speaking purely from an Occam BSD perspective of a VM image that is package based. So I guess we wait for Colin or I spend a weekend with it. No worries. Okay. And I see a number of different kernels in package base. Is it obvious how one selects one? They seem to be like kind of minimal or this or that.
uh, those are the kernels as defined in the default configuration. You can install all of them and then pick one you want to
Yes.
boot.
It, at
And
through the loader or through
the loader
loader.conf
conf,
entry.
the loader conf entry, you can pick the
Thank you.
default. You can look
Thank
up the
you.
loader conf setting for that.
Perfect. That's my question. Any other ideas, questions about package base? Because I, again, need a package base VM image yesterday. Oh, don't ask why to channel, was it Bert Holbrecht or Kurt Weil? Sorry. Okay. Thank you. Kernel, generic, no debug. Excellent. I appreciate that. That's a
That's for a
question.
current system, for example, if you want
Perfecto.
to run a current box with reasonable multi-core performance, not slowed
Fantastic.
down by all the invariant checking and witnessing code.
Cool. Okay, well, that said, as per the theme of the week, that was both totally off topic and totally on topic. Um, Mark L kindly gave me the ability to close vm-bhyve tickets, and I've been reaching out to individuals. I'm trying to find out what that preferred workflow looks like, and I've put a bunch of thought into this, and I welcome your Anjaneg, we can talk a little later if you've got other topics. So on bug triage, there are vm-bhyve specific issues that are older than my youngest daughter, who is now 7. So that said, I'm like, uh, one, there are a number of problems with old t issues insofar as, well, all the software mentioned is technically out of date. The person has probably moved on, but of course they might be onto something. So I was thinking perhaps we create a wiki page on things we should test, because if someone found that, gee, Arch Linux under vm-bhyve nested KVM is having issues, well, that's not a guarantee that FreeBSD should probably offer, but it is fascinating because we're all into cool uses of all these tools. So my proposal is perhaps a testing page or some place for documentation, and it would describe the essential things we must test as often as weekly with weekly snapshots. And absolutely before releases, I found that there are several build option breakages, and I will report those. And then there's the fascinating corner case stuff, such as that Alpine under bhyve, under KVM, or Windows Server, not installing the RDP component, but everything else works fine, which might not be a bhyve issue, and it's not necessarily something bhyve developers might go after. But out of absolute respect to the users, I think they should be documented somewhere. And I couldn't help but notice, just one sec, that there are quite a few vm-bhyve port PRs listed as simply in-base bhyve. And often it's like, well, no, the vm-bhyve didn't set up your bridge correctly, and you're blaming the underlying OS, which is not quite accurate. So just purely as a smoke test, I reached out to the person with the oldest ones, Joseph, and I haven't heard back. Domagoj gave me a very detailed response that you see above, plus saying, hey, that seems to have been fixed since 2016. And so I politely mentioned that and closed the PR. And then there's a very hot topic where a new libc under various Linux distributions is causing trouble. So that is a hot topic. Yes, Jan, you had a point on this.
I had a question.
Yes,
Two,
Anthony,
actually.
please.
One of them is a notice that I just noticed, which is our lingo and young people's lingo are different, because when we say PR, we understand problem report,
Oh, no
and
question.
young people understand pull requests. So maybe we should find something that says issues instead of PR. So just saying.
Amen.
Press release, exactly, yes.
Promo was there. Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
noted.
And secondly, I have a customer which has a very old Windows servers. We're talking Windows Server 2000. Which one was the one that cloned Windows 7, 2008?
Goodness.
Yeah,
Sounds about
2008.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and as you have guessed, my customer is the government. And of course, the idea is we move that server into a virtualized environment. So my question is, what's the oldest version of Windows that we can virtualize on top of bhyve?
You want
Because
UEFI, and there are tricks to do Windows 7 and sort of kind of, I guess,
Server
2008,
2008 with
presumably.
UEFI. I see.
And Microsoft does not make that easy, of course. But yes, in theory, it can be done. And there are tools like Aomi that can, air quotes, migrate, change, do whatever. But my mileage has varied. Daniel might have some insights. But it's a totally valid question, especially for, be it the retro hobbyists, the people who have that one VM that controls the time card machine, whatever. Just there are lots of cases for it, but man, it's a pain.
And speaking of nuclear codes and similar military stuff, and I'm not saying, but no comment about the actual existence for 2003. Maybe I should just tell them to upgrade at this point instead of virtualizing.
Windows Server 2003.
Nuke it.
Yeah, the one that looked like Windows XP. Yes, that's the one.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
It was 2003, right? Do I remember
That sounds
correctly?
about right.
Sounds about right, yeah.
That is something totally for the wiki. That is something to document. But if someone has a PR report that Windows Server 2003 under bhyve, under Linux KVM on Ubuntu is having trouble, it's like, well, is that really our responsibility? I don't know, but it is fascinating. I look forward to the blog post or conference talk.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. And speaking of these calls, Anshoonik, did you make it to the Collabora talk call, and have you made progress such that we can move all these bad boy talks off of Google Docs?
I made it to the Collabora chat. We are in a pretty good place. The system is running in production mode on FreeBSD. Of course, there were a lot of hacks in the building process. I will be submitting a diff to the Collabora team for them to merge it properly, because I have no idea what I'm doing there, frankly speaking.
Okay.
I'm just building, something is missing, the name of the library is different between this Unix and that Unix, let's modify the CMake files, etc. So that's where I'm at the moment.
Cool.
They had a basic look at it, and they said it looks fine. You can, if you don't know how to do it in like a Git request, because a lot of the files are auto-generated because of the thing that should die. What was the name of it? GNU Auto Tools. Yes.
Right. Yes.
So they're like, just maybe open an issue with all the details, and we'll try to look into it. And their infrastructure is now ready to handle FreeBSD as part of their release pipeline. When all of that is done, we'll also let the project know for the porters to make a port of it. That would make FreeBSD the only operating system where you can do pkg install collabora and be done with it, because every other Linux operating system requires either a custom repo or a Docker image.
Okay,
Yeah.
and hopefully Illumos can be on that list. Well, great. Thank
I
you
don't
so,
see
so
why
much for
not. And
pursuing that.
and
Exactly.
Illumos did have a lot less issues thanks to their Linux compatibility layer. I mean,
Okay.
they're a lot more ready than we are if they run if Illumos runs the Linux version.
For the win.
Yeah.
Okay, Mark, your hand went up, and do feel free to just interject when there's a moment, because we're pretty informal about all that. What you
Oh
got?
yeah.
Go.
So going back to your original concern here, which was how do you triage
Yes, please.
the vm-bhyve bugs? One of the things that I did last week was go through a number of bugs and raised it to source manager. We were having a bug triage, and I'll give you a link.
Yes, Mark described that, and had shared the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. Most of which is good. Don't worry. Okay.
Yeah, so I looked at a variety of different assertion failed ones that have been open for a while, and John Baldwin's going to look through it and try to close the ones that I linked here. But I think as I'm looking through all of the bugs,
Yep.
what I'm seeing is that there's not a good reproduction case, and there's not a good discussion about what version of everything someone's trying to run so that it could be reproduced. And so I'd say that's the feedback as we get new bugs, or if you're going through and triaging old bugs, is to make sure that there's enough information to be able to do the reproduction.
Amen. And that was something from the call where I dragged out my bug reporting for vendors or non-committers, people who are not intimately familiar with who, I don't know, IMP, JHB, etc. are, because that's not knowledge we should assume of all users, including Rupesh, who's on the call. So have you seen any good resources on what that orientation can look like? And bless his heart, Mark has some ideas, and I think I've got them still open on what that better reporting can look like. I will look for maybe And Antrig, you've got something? Looking
I just
for.
wanted to say, as a FreeBSD vendor, when we ship our appliance or our virtual appliance rather to the customers, we also have kind of a script in there that gathers data and sends it back to us. Because I mean, I don't expect our users to know what the jail is, what the ZFS layout looks like, the information that we need. So I'm thinking, what is the kind of information that can be auto-produced by a script to understand the state of the machine, so we can do the reproducing of the issue easier. You see where I'm going with this?
Absolutely. And I'll immediately say, be sure to sanitize certain things because, hey, here's all
yeah,
our,
of
yeah,
course.
of course.
IP addresses
Yep,
and yeah.
exactly. So to their credit, FreeNAS, TrueNAS does that quite well with their debug file, but it also is pretty sensitive information hiding in there. And there used to be BSD stats, which kind of sort of paints some of that picture. But go ahead. Was that Mark jumping in?
Oh, I was just going to say that, on the assertion failed bugs,
Hmm.
really it was binary blobs that they were wanting people to download and run. And that didn't really, but they knew here are the steps that caused a device to crash. It'd be much more useful to be able to give us those same steps in a text format or some other format that we could use to reproduce it, but not have to download binary blobs that have unknown ancestry.
No, yeah, nicely put. So you're saying the project would provide a debugging package, for lack of a better term, that might facilitate things? Or I don't know. What could that look like? Who's pushing, who's pulling?
So for these, they were doing fuzz testing, and so they were able to get traces that caused assertion failures based on that fuzzing.
Mm-hmm.
In which case, they didn't tell us, here here are the writes to registers that caused the assertion. They gave us binary blobs that we had to rerun.
So the user provided the binary blobs, not John saying, here, try this kernel or something.
Yeah,
Okay.
but again, as I'm reading bug reports, they're devoid of, here's where I downloaded, here's the version of Linux that I downloaded,
Yeah.
here's the ISO, etc.
That's true of countless reports on reproducibility. It's like, well, saying one, it's broke. Two, it's broke on FreeNAS. Three, it's broke on vm-bhyve. It's like, well, yeah, but what about on FreeBSD? Go ahead, Jan.
The reproducers on the bug reports are no longer available on the external storage they're linked to. So, for example, this bug report,
let's see.
triggers an assertion, or it used to trigger an assertion in FreeBSD 12.1, but the links to the Uni Bochum
if you look at the web page that I linked, I already noted that the download file is no longer available.
Oh, should have read
on your page here, the one I'm showing.
Yeah, so there's a set that the download files are no longer available. There's a set that they're attached to the bug, and some that are available via download. But and then I have recommendations for all of these. It was agreed that John was going to go through them and look to get them closed out one way or another.
So one super key point is the timely responses to catch people while they're hot just after they've made the report, and maybe they still have the system up and running before they tear it down and install another OS because they're so frustrated.
Exactly.
I can only speak for myself on this call. At least after all these years, I can finally close tickets or modify them, which previously was like, well, that's a well-documented issue. I can't close the ticket. The person's no longer reachable by email. The ticket will sit there for another decade until they move off of Phabricator and delete all history. So what can we, as the people right here, right now, to make this actionable, help with? And in context, let me go back to that big old list. Here is a list that I support. I filtered by date because I think I personally want to knock some of these older ones off because that's not a great look, because they're often just like, well, vm-bhyve doesn't work with under KVM with Alpine or something. And then some are very fresh, like the massive fallout on the libc hitting Red Hat and others. Like here's the glibc 239 issue. It's like, well, is that a bhyve issue? Is that every virtualized Linux system? I do not know. And I know Tubner might do a blog post on that, but here we are.
I believe that this is a bhyve issue with AMD.
Okay.
Because it's only occurring on AMD. I haven't been able to reproduce this on Intel.
Okay.
And I don't have an AMD system.
Understood. And fortunately, it's getting some attention organically. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Konstantin. Thank you, you name it. So, and this is a great level of responsiveness from the broader community, and maybe not a single person here is officially responsible, such as perhaps Kib working on the IOMMU. Going full circle, for those present, what interests you in addressing the issue of getting these PRs, in this case, problem reports, not promo, as accurate and reproducible as possible, closed when obviously a misreading of a documentation bit or stumbling onto something genuinely interesting, etc.? Or does everyone just want it to work and who cares? It's someone else's problem. Assertion failed. Yeah, someone I think went through a fuzzer and just blasted them in there, which is what you were looking at, Mark. Is that accurate? 2020.
Yeah, those are probably the ones that I already highlighted.
Got it.
But the thing that I was trying to address is there's a lot of assertion failed issues here,
Yeah.
and it's causing noise in terms of the number of bugs that are open against bhyve.
Here's a page load worth of them. Yeah.
So if we can get rid of some number of them, then it would help triage the rest of them.
And I sure can't help but notice they're the same file repeated. It's like, yeah, okay, can that be one ticket or a parent ticket or something? But okay, and thank you very much for looking at that, because that's what I'm discussing. And quick show of hands, has anyone heard of OS 2? It's like this thing we've never heard of is having trouble with bhyve, which
If
sure
I
sounds like a
remember
feature request to
correctly,
me. Go ahead, Jan. Yes.
if I remember correctly, that's a kind of undead, commercially supported derivative of the real OS2 for the 2 dozen or so global customers who still depend on it.
Okay. Okay.
Like a few banks, I think a big travel agency and so on.
Yeah.
There are a handful of customers will make it possible to run OS2 on modern-ish hardware. Things like USB
Okay.
support and
Or virtualized, which would be a great
Yeah.
use case of that old ticketing
exactly.
system or whatever. Okay. Well, so is that a feature request or a bug? It's hard to say, because having never heard of it, that's like kind of tricky.
I'm gonna say that that's a
Yes.
marketing problem, because so here's my mentality for
On
this
their
is,
part or our part?
no, for on our part, because what we have right now is the scenario that bhyve on modern hardware with modern operating systems is production ready and can be used for a lot of cloud companies even, right?
Yeah.
However, if someone is not that aware and they do a small search like bhyve bugs and they see a lot of these things, which might not be even be they're either like not important because they've been fixed, but we haven't triaged
Yeah.
them completely yet, or they're like the scenario that Jan said, which is like, hey, there are like 2 dozen people on the planet who use this operating system, so it's a niche case, right? It gives the image that bhyve might not be production ready. While in reality, that same operating system might not even work on like 99% of other hypervisors except ESXi for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
So
Because some
that's
company
my
paid them
worry.
or raised money long
Exactly.
ago, like
Yeah.
10 years ago. Great.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
OS2 clones. I've kind of prioritized these, and you are welcome to move around these priorities. My first thought is we should regularly test in-base components. We should then have some notion of advanced testing, especially with all the progress being made on AMD and IOMMU. Yes, there are issues, but they're also being addressed, so we kind of need a really tight feedback loop there. ARM64 is coming online, and then it's this whole wish list of like, gee, Temple OS and OS2 clones and React OS and. So, and then can one safely say that a modern CentOS is bug for bug compatible enough with, say, RHEL to be a meaningful test system, or not so much? I don't know. I'm not a RHEL person.
Hmm.
And are we back to RHEL ISOs having to fall off a truck to just do some basic testing? Because it's a bit unreasonable to say, hey, let's just say retroactively, hey, Peter Green, we need you to spend $1,000 on RHEL just to go test something for someone who made a really
I mean,
vague
the
bug report. It's like,
there are two notes about this. Number one is, if you look at the modern world, like Linux admin, subreddit, etc., you will notice that most people have moved to the CentOS continuation, which is like
have
Alma
they?
Linux.
Oh, Alma
Yes.
and Rocky? Is one of them winning?
Yes,
So
Yeah,
it's
Alma.
like, which one do I sit
Alma and
down?
Rocky both.
Yeah, they're very much bug-to-bug compatible, and they have
Okay.
more like a different development model, not a release model. So people are happy with these two. And
Okay.
number two is Oxide is now an official partner of Red Hat,
Oh, interesting.
which means that I assume somewhere someone is testing modern Rahel on vm-bhyve, practically speaking, you know? So
Great.
I assume, I assume that's what that partnership would
No,
assume, you know?
I think that's an invalid assumption because they have something I think they're calling Propolis or something like that, which is
Propolis, yeah.
it's a re-implementation of all of the user space parts of bhyve in Rust.
I see what you mean, but I mean,
So they've rewritten the whole
would the
virtual
bugs be
drivers
in
and
the
so on.
user space? Oh, even the virtual drivers. Okay.
Yeah, basically they supposedly reuse the Solaris port of the VMM device and so on, but all the virtualized devices and so on are re-implemented in Rust.
Interesting.
So this is not a good smoke test for bhyve anymore.
I see. But yes, Michael, I just want to say Alma or Rocky.
Oh yeah.
No, as far as we can tell, the only people who are stuck with CentOS are the people who are running cPanel web admins because they can't upgrade due to
Jeez. Okay.
some problems. Yeah, but that's the
Which
scenario.
does it have to be two of them for us to test? Because heaven forbid they're different and like really? Okay, great. Is there anyone who a bit, Andrew, like breaking up the closed captioning for YouTube videos, which had some great feedback yesterday also, which is like, for example, during Q&A, give the person the name of the person talking, which when you only hear a voice from the background, that's actually really, really helpful. Would it be
or at least
any
indicate
way,
what's the question and the answer?
amen, both valuable? When it's a core developer asking a question, it heightens the interest. So I really don't like the fact that simply responding with a question, hey, is this still impacting you, CCs the virtualization list, which is a whole bunch of noise that I don't even want to see. I'm experimenting with reaching out to people by hand. Would anyone else want to participate in just grabbing some of these and literally just writing the person asking, hey, is this still impacting you? Hey, did you, sometimes did you try this, this, and this? And just trying to get some of these knocked down to at least get us within what's a reasonable scope? 3 years of recent activity? Go ahead, Mark.
So I think it would still be good to don't do the sideband, but do it on the bug because that will show a history of someone trying to contact them, and that way we can we can say after a while it's they haven't responded in a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever.
Correct.
We should just close it out.
I agree, but at the same time, I am not here to close things quietly, anonymously. I'm here to simply say, hey, I reached out at this point and give a summary of what took place as opposed to the line by line. I don't know. What's everyone's thoughts on spamming the list with that kind of noise? I guess on some level it's cool that someone's active, but it might also discourage people from further reading the list because it's just a bunch of looking for people. I don't know. I don't care. I just want these bugs to get closed.
Apologize later.
Apologize later.
Don't
Yeah, okay.
apologize. It's needed work. If you don't want to hear the noise, reconfigure your mail user agent to hide it from you.
Hell, I'm sure most people filter me
unsubscribe.
out anyway. So yeah, okay, cool. Well, that's the unsubscription that bugs me because I barely read that list because I don't have the mental bandwidth, but there I am spamming it.
That you're not spamming it.
Okay.
It's not spam.
By definition, no, but I'm
noise, but it's
noising
not
it. Okay, fine.
Two more notes.
Yes, please.
One of them might apply only to me, I'm not sure, which is bhyve in high performance computing environments. Because if people have been around here, you know how much issues we had if you're running Linux with more than 1 terabyte of memory.
Absolutely,
and such
but
things.
Related to tickets or just general awesomeness?
No, yeah, general awesomeness.
Okay.
Thank you, bhyve. But at the same time, when there are bugs, how would we ever reproduce those? Because I have a system, but I don't have two of them.
Bingo,
like
exactly.
what's the protocol there? That's one question maybe we can think about later. Not that bhyve is common in HPC environments at the moment,
Entrepreneur,
And
that's
the other,
literally just partnerships between people in the community who
yeah,
it's wetware, not hardware. So it's wetware with
yes,
hardware and say, yo, Clara, we know you have an Ampere multi-core AMD system. Can you try this test when you have a moment? That kind of thing.
yeah.
'Cause unless you
And
want to
the
send me a bunch
other,
of 2 TB RAM systems. Go ahead, Entrepreneur.
and the other one is we focus a lot on the mailing list and Bugzilla and Fab,
Yeah.
but there's also a very large Beehive community on the forums. And with like there are so many, I want to say, common issues there that I keep seeing them every 2 months.
Yeah.
They are either undocumented or so that's what I'm saying. Like I feel like we kind of left out the forums community.
But you were going to
The
say Discord, buddy.
no. The Discord
Interesting.
people, I
Yeah.
mean, we can't document, we can't do anything on Discord, frankly
Okay.
speaking. The
Yeah.
platform is just terrible. However, the most common one is I installed Debian and I can't boot it. I'm like, yes, there's a single directory in EFI that you have to change the name of it. You know, like
Yeah.
there are so many such things
You-
that I see in the forums.
There is a depconf you can set to install to the removable device location so that you don't even have to manually copy it. Don't have a link, but and remember that it's one depconf during after the installation, and it works correctly. And it's no longer an issue if you use bhyve with EFI variable file, because modern bhyve can preserve the EFI variable with the boot path so that and grub during installation writes to
Yes.
that. The problem was that for until I think 1.5 years or so ago, bhyve discarded that on guest shutdown. So basically, you installed, everything looked correct. You could list the EFI variables. It was properly installed. You rebooted. The variables were reset to default, and it failed to boot. And
Yes.
then you had to boot again into the install medium and fix it up. Some people just manually copied
Yeah.
the EFI bootloader into that place, but that means that it does not get updated and so on. So
Yeah.
the proper way is to run the right depconf, or this issue is basically fixed, unless you, I think, on FreeBSD 13, but 14 has this working.
Yes.
If you
And
invoke bhyve
yeah.
correctly to actually have a split firmware boot ROM and
Yep.
variable file.
Is that in the wiki or is that in a forum post or Discord thing or what?
That solution,
It's in
the
the
one that I said and Jan said, I've seen
Yeah.
them like 6 times each on the forums.
Can you
Yeah.
shoot some links and we'll consolidate? Because that's just
Yes, I'll find and
a
send right now.
duplication
Yeah.
of effort.
I
That's
think
not helping
the
anyone.
fix, which could even help the Discord community, no matter how chaotic and unstructured Discord is to collect an FAQ of curated answers in the wiki for now.
That's
And
literally
hope
what
that
the wiki was, an FAQ that I maintained, and
exactly.
they said, "Oh, put it on the wiki," and then it's like it went there to die. So, okay, great, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
now that we have a more active docs team, maybe we can, once the content is in the wiki, ask them to please put it into their markup
Yeah.
and clean up the language to follow their style guide. So
Yep.
you can hopefully write technically correct, a bit, let's say, colorful prose into the wiki and have them put that into nice technical documentation lingo. Yeah.
Yep.
Here's
Go ahead,
my
Mark.
most
Yes.
recent response to be able to use
Oh.
the UEFI vars.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe I'll just add the Beehive tag of the forums in my RSS feed to make sure that we don't miss such things. Another very common one is how can I get faster connection between VMs? And apparently the correct answer was using NetGraph. So we just deployed NetGraph for a customer with Beehive, and we got I want to say 8 gigabits per second, which is very weird for me because the tap interface says it's a gigabit. How is it a gigabit device, but its iPerf test shows
Oh, that's easy
10
to
gigabit?
explain. The link speed you see there is just a flag. It's not the tap
Oh,
interface will basically Ethernet has a media setting so that you can have something like a
yeah.
gigabit Ethernet interface, and if you
Yeah.
rip like cut one cable, it falls back to 100 megabits or half duplex,
Yep.
depending on which cable. And
Ooh.
so this setting basically is what's reported, but it's just a flag. It's not a traffic shaper
I see what you mean.
in
Anthony,
virtual environments.
we were missing you for this topic a week or two ago. Yep, last week. There's a new vm-bhyve which has a bunch of cleanup that apparently you were part of,
Yes.
which raises the question, okay, fine, vm-bhyve. Great, let's use it. So is there any notion of NetGraph support in it? Can one get that 8 gig
Yes.
per second right out of the box? And is that well documented?
Yes and yes.
Great. Okay.
It is in the manual
Hey,
page, in the VM manual page.
yes,
Everything
it
is in there.
supports NetGraph. Does it do correct bridges? Because it adds itself to a system rather than configures a system for virtualization. So I'm guessing
That's not done by vm-bhyve. That's done by the operator. But
is that well
vm-bhyve, you can tell it.
documented?
Yes.
If I
Okay.
remember correctly, the vm-bhyve will do the wrong thing by default and add
No.
the
vm-bhyve will
bridge.
allow you to do the wrong thing.
The
No, we'll do it by
documentation
default.
used to
It
tell
says
you to do the wrong thing.
it auto
The
creates
examples
that
too.
bridge and tap and have a nice day.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It creates a bridge and a tap. It doesn't add your external physical interface to the bridge. But
Oh, really?
people who
Okay.
don't know networking, they would do it and then configure the external interface instead of the bridge.
Yeah,
But
we have to just block that.
yeah, but because we know that that's wrong, that's why never, ever vm-bhyve would never configure your external interface. So yeah.
How much yelling would basically
But yeah.
be the fallout if someone were to propose a patch to make the bridge driver look at the member interfaces and refuse to add member interfaces with IP addresses on them? So that you just can't add them as a member as long as they have addresses on them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the right way to do this is to actually add the feature, but not enable it. Have it as a
Enable it by
CCTL.
default.
Yes, exactly. Have it as a tunable. And when it's done via tunable, we would teach people over time that make sure that this tunable is on. It will warn you if you do things wrong. And when we see that most people are doing it properly, then the tunable would be defaulted to on over time. I think that would be the correct way, that no one would come yelling and telling us that
it's
we
a
broke their shit.
CCTL, it shouldn't be a pure loader tunable, because if it's a load, then you don't want to reboot to change that.
Yantrinig,
Yes.
a tunable to do what?
A tunable.
CCTL, so that the bridge driver, if that's set, and I would like to see that enabled by default, refuses to add a member interface with an IP address configured
Oh,
on
interesting.
it,
Okay, yep.
so that you cannot add that configuration, because the other question is there a way to stop you from setting it up like that and then adding an address later? I don't think there's an easy way, a point of enforcement for that,
Mm-hmm.
for the bridge to veto retroactively adding addresses to a member. But yeah, it would be nice to have, but it would kind of require the bridge to prevent you from doing stupid things in ways which were. I don't see an easy way how the bridge driver could enforce that.
And
Now
you're basically saying, hey, you run the risk of locking yourself out of your system by adding your IP to your bridge and your member interface, and hopefully you get the syntax right, and boom, you might be locked out of your VPS, etc.
If you do it the first time,
yep.
If you already have an IP address on the member interface you want to add, and that's how you end up with a configuration most of the time, if someone has already a physical network interface, they then create a bridge and add that the first time they try it, or
Would
some
BSD
automation tries to
install
do it.
offer that?
Hmm?
Should BSD install say, hey, do you want to use
No,
bridge
no, no,
networking?
BSD install is not invoked. Sorry.
But we're talking about correct system installation that has
Uh,
networking
not.
oriented to virtualization right out of the gate and without doing it after the fact. So we currently have
So-
BSD
Okay,
install,
you
love it or hate
could
it.
set it up
So-
like that, but the problem is, unlike something like Solaris with a Crossbow
Crossbow,
and Fire Engine underneath, we don't have the ability to let basically always have the flexibility and then not pay the cost because the kernel gets to optimize the indirections away as long as you have a one-to-one relationship. So our bridge driver, before we should do that, the bridge driver should get probably a special case for a single member bridge where it basically becomes a knob
yeah.
and may actually set the ether input output functions to the ones of the driver or something, if that's possible. That would be neat.
So, Michael, what we do for our customers is,
Yes.
as soon as we have a new system, we clone jailer, we install jailer, and then we do jailer init, and then jailer init bridge to configure everything, right? And what we added in the latest version is jailer init host bridge, not just bridge. So with the command host bridge, it would tell you the interface that you're using is EM0. The bridge that you have is bridge 0. You want to attach these two together. I'm letting you know that these are the modifications that I'm doing in rcconf for you. So now everything that was for EM0 becomes for bridge 0, and EM0 will be attached to bridge 0. And after that, I'll be executing service native restart, right?
Is
So we
that
have that
proven code
document.
with idempotence and other beautifulness that can be used as a canonical reference of how to do it correctly?
I guess so. I mean, I don't see why. I don't see why. I mean, it's not idempotent for edge cases, but like it's built
Right.
in a way that even if you have VLANs configured and stuff like it just basically knows these are the things that I need to change, and it just changes them. Actually, it doesn't even change them. It just appends them at the bottom of the rcconf, so it
just
wouldn't even
overrides what you had. Just
exactly. So
okay.
if something went wrong, you can just delete the jailer added stuff, you know. So yeah.
Is that on the public
And
internet?
as far as I can tell, it's in one of our branches,
No.
but I'll
Is
have
your
to check.
branch on the
Yeah.
public internet?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it
Okay,
should be
cool.
there, yes. And overall, we did this for a couple of customers, not sorry, a couple of machines for a customer lately, and it worked fine. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should ship this to the production anyway, and let's see what people think. Because the jailer init bridge, which is the same that VM bridge, VM switch create that
Yeah.
vm-bhyve has, they're very similar
Okay.
in the code format. So I really wanted to add the host bridge idea. And I wanted to use the name host bridge because that's what things like what's the name of it? VirtualBox and stuff like that.
Yeah.
They use similar terminology, so it kind of worked fine, I guess. So yeah.
And I'm going to take small issue with vm-bhyve using public as a name for the bridge because it's like, well, that can mean many things in many contexts in that tiny
Yes.
context. So it's like, okay, great. How about public bridge if it's a bridge? Rupesh, does this give you countless ideas of how to help in this broader picture? Because here we are in December of 2024 discussing these same dam bridging issues that we've discussed for like 4 years straight. So how is it these are not solved problems? I don't get it. I'm slow. I'm terrible. I don't know. What's wrong with us?
Are you
Because it
familiar
is
with the
in a
US
lot of
elections?
No, don't even go there. That's
I mean, 4 years is nothing.
in a way, it's a solved problem. Now you just have to teach people how to hold their tools correctly.
You mean click the right thing during BSD install to say, oh, I want correct bridging for the rest of my life.
Michael, for example,
Yes.
in BSD install, there's a new feature lately that was added, which is, hey, I detected your GPU, and you can click a button to install GPU drivers.
Nice.
I haven't used it, but I saw a YouTube video about that, honestly. So I'm thinking that in the installation process, maybe we can add a Ubuntu installation style checkbox that says, is this going to be a desktop, a workstation, a virtualization host? And based on that, we can do way better configuration. I don't think anyone would argue that that's a bad idea.
Well, I think people have argued successfully that that's a bad idea in the past, because we used to have the ability to pick between GNOME and KDE
Long
by
ago, yeah.
selecting the right install media because it had to fit on a single CD. So you had like which XR11 implementation to pick or something. So the thing previously 4 or 5 or something.
Around then, yes, exactly.
And yeah,
We all use XFCE. Go ahead. Mark, Rupesh, forgive us for being just the cranky old regulars here, because we've been having these same conversations for years on end. It's like, how are we still discussing them? Anyway, Mark, thanks for looking at those tickets. I'll be secretary on some of these to whatever degree. And I guess if people complain on the list for any added noise, that's their problem, I guess. Fine, because hey, someone's got to do it, but it's never clear who that is. What else, gang? We're at an hour and 11 minutes.
Oh yeah, we're also now, I have a customer. We're now also using vm-bhyve for machine learning environments. Just saying.
With buckets of RAM, and that's a system we can run tests on, and what?
Interestingly, we're doing it on desktop grade servers, the one that's provided by Hetzner. We also have a similar build here in Armenia for like on-premise, and we're pretty happy with it. I mean, it works. Everything is that's the customer where we did the 8 gigabit per second net graph setup for with PCIe pass-through. Jan, I want to say yes on the premise one. We had like NICs that was passed through to the VMs.
and
We
for the
had
GPUs.
for the GPUs as well. Yeah, obviously, yes. Yes, there's like an NVIDIA card that's passed there for
Mark,
what
take
was
care.
that stupid Google thing? TensorFlow for TensorFlow to use it.
Using USB over IP over. Ha.
Oh,
We're all nervous there. Anshnik, are you available next week? If I'm traveling, I might be. I don't know. Not a clue.
Next
On the
week,
19th.
Tuesday, yes, sir.
Okay, cool. Thursday, same thing. Tuesday, but whatever. We'll figure it out. Y'all can talk amongst yourselves if you don't have a moderator. Other topics. Rupesh, was that helpful? I'm not sure if that's what you expected, but that's what you got. And Hans and Andrew, our resident Illumos experts, thank you for your patience on us just griping
I'm
about all
very
this.
hurtful that you don't mention me in the Illumos. I'm running a public mirror, you
Oh,
know?
you are? Sweet. Nice. Anshnik.
Yeah, my mirror is private, so
So this is basically more an Illumos call than anything else, which is just fine. Thank you very much, especially with dtrace conf taking place yesterday, which is the
That
Oxide
was so
hosted dtrace
lovely.
event.
That was so lovely.
Oh yeah, that was my first question to Jan. And he's like, yeah, it was good, but I had to jump on the ZFS call. Bummer. So Anshnik, what was your take on that event? Let's go full circle here.
I think it was nice. I was happy to see a lot of the Rust integrations. Not that I care, but like just the idea that, because Rust people, they love to see what other Rust people are doing, and it would be very nice to see for the new Rust people to rediscover clean water, such as Illumos and dtrace and stuff like that. So Oxide is doing an amazing work there for sure. Other than that, I mean, it's true that dtrace hasn't had much development in the last 4 years, but that also means that we haven't seen a lot of bug fixes. Because remember my dtrace bug that we
I
found
absolutely
2 years ago?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we're still tracking it down to see what happened there, but
happened, or Mark said, did this ever work? Because he wasn't convinced. Sorry to say.
yeah, I'm trying to find. I haven't had the time to do that actually, to find on which version it was. But yeah, I'll track
Okay.
it down, and it's nice to see more integrations there apparently. And maybe one day we can also have a dtrace weekly calls. But very tiny community. That's like way small community.
On that point, I was hoping we'd do a lot more hackathoning, although the bug triage is exactly that. So no, I'm not losing sleep over it. And I'm working on a bunch of things on that long list of wish list items. I updated it this morning. Thank you very much. I do not have the mental bandwidth for a fourth call. However, I'm more than happy to hijack calls, be it, hey, on this given call, we're focusing on dtrace or other topics, because themes are actually very helpful for keeping us all focused.
On your hackathon idea,
Yeah.
the younglings or the Padawans, I should say, on Discord are very much interested into becoming a Jedi Knight, and like
that was
okay,
a point from
how
Mark as a bug triager. He's very much saying,
yeah,
yep, they're out there. We have to kind of speak their language. We have to put
yeah.
things in their terms. We can't just
So
say, oh, JHB said
maybe
this. Like, who the hell's that?
maybe we can also talk with Satesh and try to do like a one-time a monthly process with the community there. Maybe an AMA style, maybe pair programming style. I'm still not sure. Or maybe we can do the triage
Try them all.
there.
Triage. Rupesh,
Yeah.
what is your interactive platform of choice to listen in on all things up to date? Are you a Discordian? Are you a IRC-ian? Are you a forum hound, whatever language one uses there?
Yeah, Michael. Actually,
Hello.
I am new to this previously.
Yes.
Yeah, just trying to understand the things, and I would like to contribute
So
to
where do you
FreeBSD.
hang out?
And
Do you hang out on Discord, IRC, Fediverse, somewhere else?
yeah, I'm there in Discord also.
Okay. And is there a corner of all this that interests you, be it documentation, be it PCI pass-through, be it other stuff? Take care, Andrew. Have a great week and weekend.
Yeah, actually, see, I am interested in development only. So I can start with some testing initially, and then bug fixing, minor bugs, whatever I can take.
Okay.
Just want to learn the things and want to get the internal details. So, yeah.
I will say one thing very unique about the bug tickets is that they actually represent people we've never met in the wild doing stuff with the product, as opposed to what the vision that each of us have for it. Product is kind of used at an extreme there, but it also has the inherent development aspect where something went wrong in development or documentation, which for some is indistinguishable from development. So do feel free to peruse those and see what jumps out to you. And of course, there's armsec.org. Tell us about that. Oh, wrong chat. Never mind. Oh, are you marketing an
Sorry.
event? What you got there? I'm going to look on another browser window.
I was sending it to a
Is it going
friend.
to be
We have
squiggly? Oh, it's not squiggly. Oh, cool.
No, it's
Okay.
not. It's in
It's not
English. It's
squiggly. Okay,
it's in
cool.
English. Yeah.
Cool. And when does this take place? In
Saturday. Yes, will
oh,
be done on
I
Saturday.
won't
Yes.
be there.
Yeah. Oh, it might even interest you that next Saturday we're
Yes.
organizing a CTF, Capture the
Oh,
Flag
yep.
competition,
Yep,
and
yep.
the infrastructure is on FreeBSD, Jails, and vm-bhyve.
There you go. Please document the dickens out of that.
Yes, I will.
So Rupesh, don't be a stranger. You are on equal footing here. This is your call, not mine. I hope you find the perfect place to make yourself useful and satisfy your own interests.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome. Do you work with any of these tools for your day job or work, student job, or anything? Student, academic work?
Sorry.
Do you use any of these tools mentioned with your studies or work?
Yeah, dtrace actually. Yeah, dtrace I used not much, but yeah, dtrace and this KGDB and these tools we use for debugging, and this FreeBSD. Don't have much experience in FreeBSD. Yeah, currently we are using FreeBSD.
Okay. Well, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've come to the Illumos call with just me babbling on about FreeBSD. Ah, oh, Jan's largely a FreeBSD here. Andrzej's pretty darn agnostic, and we're just kind of bothering Hans periodically.
That was very accurate.
I try. Okay. Anything else? Or are we good for this fine, foggy, rainy over here Thursday morning for some? I will try to get those calls up I've been blasting out an Imagine-based installer of my NAS pre-configured using Imagine. So it's like nested Imagineception. And hence my question on PkgBase VM images, because I am
So if
leveraging the holy hell out of those. Yes, Jan.
yeah, we can just stop the recording and talk about what I have for jail installation, because that the point where you are, it sounds like you are almost there, so
I've
that you
got
can
the
do the
fundamentals.
same.
Wasn't sure how much I have to do manually, because it sounds like there are still some manual steps, all of which I and the release tools have done. It's like not a
So
secret, but
what you have to
easy
do
button.
is, once you have run something like make build world,
Yep.
make build kernel, you run make packages.
Yep.
That gives you your local package repository in user object.
Yep.
And then you
You
basically
serve them over Nginx.
Yes, with
no,
Jan's caching,
this is to do the
varnish
installation
caching.
from that.
Okay.
And now the problem is you kind of have to find the point in the release project where it normally does the VM image and how it populates that. And instead of unpacking the tarballs into it, you just install the packages.
Yep.
That would
Which
be the
obviously sets up your boot blocks for you automatically.
Huh? Michael,
It
where
doesn't.
do
I
you
know.
get the
My whole
impression
point.
that anything else does that for you?
Oh, the installer does, which might support
Yes, but
PkgBase
the
in our
installer is
lifetimes.
not used there as far as I know.
Correct. So we can
Have you
yet
looked at
have
the
nice.
code at all?
I've even put
And how should a
basic
package
PkgBase
do that
support
for
in.
you?
There are post-installation steps, such as creating users, such as many other things. So I
Yes,
believe there's
there's
a
a hook,
rich Pico package ecosystem. And
but
what do you
none
know?
of the normal
OcamBSD has
stuff
basic
does it
PkgBase
directly,
support
so it does not
already.
belong in the package.
Okay, fine.
Just because I install the file version of a bootloader, I do not want it to DD over whatever device some script thinks may be my boot device. And right now, a normal FreeBSD installation also doesn't, if you upgrade the system with FreeBSD update, rewrite the boot blocks.
Correct.
So
Kidding. Anyway, awesome. Thank you. And if you're really bored, here's the OcamBSD PkgBase flag, because yes, these are in, I know, despite appearances, somewhat informed questions. Well, thank you, everyone. I'll stop the recording. We can argue about this separately. I wish you a fantastic week and weekend. Take care. Anyone want the honors?
Always me.
Always you. Goodness. Go ahead.
Please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.